God fucking damn. Let's talk about this. Let's just get right down to the dirty business here. All in the dirty fucking business here. My goodness. Okay. Fuck this. Fuck everything. Fuck this. Fuck this. Fuck this. Fuck this. Fuck this. And of course, it's been a really hard past couple of months for us all. In fact, this specific issue that we've been dealing with, I mean, it predates even September of 2021. I mean, it's been an ongoing battle for people with uteruses in the United States for so fucking long. This is ridiculous. I mean, of course, we're not even just talking about the Roe versus Wade, sabbatical that's been going on. We're also talking about the plethora of anti-transgender legislation. And of course, this is not my first time addressing both of these topics in the same video, or even in separate videos. This is not a new rodeo to me. But you know what? Fuck it. This is where I am going to just fucking vent. I'm allowed to vent, right? This is my channel. I'm allowed to tell you my feelings and thoughts on the whole thing. It does affect me. It does affect people like me. So I'm allowed to have my fucking fair share, my opinion, my thoughts on the matter. Especially since this is a bunch of legislation that is legislated by people who are nothing like me at all, and it's about people like me. For clarification, I do not have a uterus. It does not affect me directly, but it also does, and this is not talked about enough even within those that are affected by this, it is also a trans issue that abortion is banned. It is a huge trans issue, in fact. There are transgender men who have uteruses. There are transgender non-binary folks who have uteruses. This is not spoken about enough. And it's important that we speak about this and we highlight this because it's more than just cisgender women who have every right to be fucking pissed about this. But it's more than just them. It's more people. And usually the cisgender men, cisgender women who are, speaking about this like on a regular basis, it's usually white cisgender women. It's very rare where you see black women or black trans people, black non-binary folks who are being, given a chance to speak up on a voice. I strongly recommend y'all expand your fucking horizon a bit on this subject. Adrienne Marie Brown is one person to listen to on this subject. She has all kinds of really good, not just literature, but she actually is just an avid fucking activist. And I think she's worth listening to on this subject specifically. But y'all are welcome to include more names in the description and such. So the other thing is that with all this being said, it's just like all of this, and I just have to say this, like, let's just be real here. This is being platformed and proposed to into legislation with the intent of protecting people's lives, specifically children, right? Like, let's break it down one at a time, right? The anti-abortion shit is not necessarily for children, but for children who are not born, right? Because, look, like, there's a lot of weird debate, and I'm not going to entertain the debate here of, like, when a child is a child or when a child is legally alive or whatever. Like, I mean, for fuck's sake, someone could be in the hospital, like an old person, and they could be like, like in a coma, and you could be legally allowed, depending on where you live, you can legally pull the plug on them even though their heart is beating. But then there is the argumentation being put into office that a child's heart is beating, therefore that child is a person, or some shit like that. Which, it's like, there's a double standard here. It's like, there is less of an incentive to be pro-life, quote unquote, for people who are currently alive, and I'll talk more about that in a second, than there are for children who are not even born. Now, of course, we know why this is the case, because God and God's fucking sperm is necessary, because every child who was unborn is a child of God, and you know they're not they've committed no sins ever. They can't commit sin, but once they are born into sin, so therefore fuck them. That's the fucking, like, you know, fucking brainworms that swim around in the evangelical's mind. And they are usually the most powerful people behind this whole fucking platform. But more importantly, like, this is what I mean, right? Like, once the child is born, you know, there needs, you know, if you're gonna fucking force people to give birth to children, right, then, you know, you gotta give that child and that, you know, parent some fucking, like, bare basics, very, like, just at least the bare fucking minimum. Maternity leave, you know? Like, social welfare programs, like, the ability to actually be there for their child, right? I know people who were unable to see their child because, like, they were going to get written up at work for this. Like, you can't predict when your child is going to get born. You can't give in, like, a 2-week notice for a day off and have your boss approve of it or not. Like, maybe not all the time. Sometimes maybe, but I don't think all the time you can. That's just ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous to assume that a child can be like planned born or something like that, and then you gotta write, you know, like, this one I'm gonna use my PTO to go see my child get born. Like, you see how, like, alien capitalism is, like how not human capitalism is, how, like, it necessitates this fucking coercion against people being with their own children, even. Right? Like, the other thing is that, and someone called me out on this statement, and I think I see where they're coming from, but, like, let me say my original piece, and then I'll talk about the critique here. And that is, I'm not the only one who has said this, but, you know, I think that if we're going to force women to give birth to children, or, you know, give people with uteruses, like, no consent on their fucking bodily autonomy, and we're gonna force them to give, like, birth to children against their will, then why aren't we making cisgender men have vasectomies? Right? Like, why is that not in law, right? If you're so worried about, you know, like, unborn children getting killed in the uterus or whatever, right? Hypothetically speaking, why is it not entertained in legislation, the idea of forcing cisgender men to get a vasectomy, right? Which is weird, right? Because before I transitioned, even before I, like, came out as a trans woman and everything, I actually went in to get a vasectomy. I, like, told my doctor, my primary care doctor, I want a vasectomy. My primary care doctor referred me to a specialist who does vasectomies. And the person who did that job, like, they didn't do it, by the way. They denied me. They laughed in my face. They looked at my balls and they were like, it would be a shame if, you know, we ruined that. Like, you know, we took away your chance to give birth to children. But that's already a medically licensed professional telling me, someone who has not come out as trans yet, I am not allowed a vasectomy, which is weird, right? Like, you'd think that, you know, I'm an adult and I can consent to my own body, that I can say, hey, I want a vasectomy. This is how I want to live my life. This is my choice. I'm a consenting adult. I'm like, at that point, I was already in my, like, mid-20s, right? But anyway, so it's like, it's the sentiment that, you know, if there's going to be abortions, you know, being banned against the consent and autonomy of people with uteruses, then why don't we just make cisgender men have vasectomies? Of course, that is not what we all believe. And, I mean, of course, it is usually said in a joking, hyperbolic manner. But the truth is that, you know, and someone pointed this out to me, why should we have to resort to that, right? Like, why should we have to have this, even exchange in the first place? You know, where cisgender men are forced to have vasectomies and, you know, pregnant people with uteruses are forced to have their children. Why have either of them in the first place? Of course, men having men having vasectomies, cisgender men having vasectomies is absolutely like reciprocal to the damage that the state is doing towards women and people with uteruses. But at the same time, like, it's important to remember that using the state for coercive purposes is more likely to push back on marginalized people, including women and people with uteruses. So this is about control, really, right? It's about control. It's about how the state wants to maintain control over the production of a labor force, right? It's about how the state specifically, like, the state, like, is secular. Of course, there are non-secular people in office, but the state operates on a secular means, right? But even so, it's like, the secular explanation for this is the reproduction of a future labor force, right? Think about it like this. And I'm also thinking about this not just in the context of today, but more in the context of the Reagan years and what that enveloped into, you know. I'm actually a byproduct of the Reagan years, if you will, of, you know, there being very piss poor fucking, you know, healthcare for women around that time in my area, or otherwise discouraged because of evangelical and Catholic Christians in my area, right? I don't want to get too specific on my story, but my story is very similar to others. But think about it. When that child is born, that child has no resources, little to no resources. It's not always true. Sometimes children are more privileged than others, right? But in this scenario where people are not allowed to get an abortion and people have to non-consensually, like, give birth to their children, it's very harmful, like, actively harmful to the child specifically, right? Especially if we're caring about children here. We care about children, right? Like, I asked this to the Christian conservatives. You give a shit about children, right? I know y'all are raping children in the Catholic Church and shit, and I know you got your own little child sex traffic ring with Matt Gaetz and shit. I know y'all have that. I know y'all are really sad that Tony Alamo passed away. I know y'all are a bunch of quiverful motherfuckers and shit, but I know y'all care about children, right? Like, for real. Like, answer me for real. You care about children, right? Not just your children, but children, right? Like, I feel weird having to ask that. Like, should I ask that question? Is that like something that should be assumed as a given? Because I don't think it is. But anyway, children who are born in these environments, they're usually born in an unstable environment, especially when the person giving birth did not consent to this. And a lot of these legislations are taking into account rape and incest. Rape, meaning non-consensual sex. That means the person giving birth did not consent to having this child, or conceiving the child, or any fucking sexual acts for that matter. And then incest, interfamilial sexual acts. That means dad fucking daughter. That means, like, you know what I mean? It's that shit. They factored in that shit. And they still said there should be no repercussions or systematic fucking reactions necessary to lessen the danger to the person giving birth to that child. You know, there's a huge fucking pressing for, like, you know, banning condoms all over the place. There's a huge fucking pressing to ban, like, abortion clinics and, you know, like, Planned Parenthoods and shit. Which, by the way, those clinics are there to make the environment safer for abortion. Which is ridiculous, right? Like, you would want, you know, a licensed medical professional to perform something as serious and traumatizing as an abortion in that scenario where it is necessary to have an abortion, rather than your uncle's fucking rusty-ass coat hanger, after he probably was the one who raped the fucking person who is the victim of this fucking crime against humanity committed by the state. I don't know. I think I fucking trust a medical licensed professional over your uncle's fucking rusty ass coat hanger. Fucking goddamn. But it's like the child had no fucking means of being able to, like, get a head start in life. And of course there are success stories, undeniably so. But those success stories are isolated. And they are unique to themselves. And the system that we live in does not account for all of that. It doesn't account for, you know, the child's development, the child's growth, the child's education, the child's health care, let alone the parents' health care, right? Like, and the parents' survivability, welfare, etc. It doesn't account for that. It just kind of just sees, you know, person with a uterus, you know, and the ability to create a worker that can, you know, be a part of the labor force in 20 years. That's what they see it as. And that's why I'm like, I have to say this right now, and that is, this is even why I'm an anarchist, right? Because the state literally creates people for the sake of non-consensual activity. Non-consensually being put under the capitalist system. Non-consensually having to, like, maintain your pregnancy against your will, even if you were raped or were a victim of incest. And moving on to the into the transgender, anti-transgender bills I was about to talk about further in the detail about, the state even coercively makes you follow gender roles against your will. Which, we're talking about children again, right? A lot of these bills, again, are keeping in mind children, right? It's usually children being weaponized against the people that they are making bans against. So it's like, this doesn't even make sense, like, logistically speaking. Like, if you're afraid that your child is transgender, then what's the problem, right? I think it would be good if children felt good in their own skin, being able to express themselves and to communicate themselves to other people during their development. That would actually help them develop better. Like, of course, like, they fucking have, like, you know, Billy with, you know, fucking a Tommy gun and basketball and tractors. And then they have, you know, Sarah with Barbies and dresses and ballet shoes or some shit, right? And these are imposed fucking gender roles. You know, and it's also even just, it's very harmful even, because they create this mold. They create this mold for the children that we are forced to give birth to. You know, coercively by the state, as Roe versus Wade is repealed. But we're looking at, like, an entire culture of people who are going to be erased. I'm talking trans people and LGBT people in general. Like, these people, we will be erased in the next coming generation. And that haunts me. That keeps me from sleeping at night sometimes. It's something I fear very deeply. Because there already are transgender suicides. I think about Leela Alcorn. When was that, like 2014, 2015? Her parents literally fucking murdered her. Like, they took her to therapy, to a religious fucking therapist, and they did not communicate to her that, with any of her, development, any of, like, who she is. Even most of her classmates were accepting of her being transgender, right? And so they decided to, and when she did commit suicide, the mother of Leela Alcorn had the audacity to not only dead name her, but to say that, she, with the dead name, is in their thoughts and prayers, as a Facebook post for clout, which I think it's the lowest form of just transphobia ever. Like, if you're dead naming your child in the wake of your child dying, and you're doing that for clout, I don't know. That's holy shit. I can't believe that there are parents like this who think that they're doing things in the best interest of children, and yet they really are not. Like, that is shameful. Just so shameful. Like, honestly, if I were that parent, if I were that parent, I couldn't live with myself, right? I would think to myself, holy shit, I made a mistake by not listening to my own child. I didn't listen to my child. My child had things to say. I decided to, let my authority dominate any chance of me and my child developing a relationship, developing like an actual communicative relationship. And actually, I think that would be, if I were a parent in that situation, and I don't mean to wish this on others, but if I were that person and I made this realization, I'd kill myself. Right? I don't wish that on others, of course. But seriously, if I were in that situation, I'd kill myself. Because I killed my own child if that were the case. Like, you should be ashamed. Like, people like that should be ashamed. And what's worse about the anti-transgender bill is that, and this is not spoken about enough either, right? There are parents who are 100% supportive of their transgender children. Like, there are parents who actually research this shit, who actually like spend hours and hours and hours, and I'm sure that they're spending plenty of time dodging the transphobic bullshit and nonsense that is not backed up by science or research or even related to the trans community. There are parents who put in that effort, and a lot of the time they don't get credited, they don't get noticed. And it's sad because this bill targets them too. The bills target them in a way that will risk their child being taken away by Child Protective Services. But it's okay if your uncle rapes your daughter and then your daughter is supposed to, give birth to a child, because the law doesn't allow for your daughter to get an abortion, even though, your uncle raped your daughter. That's okay. It's perfectly okay. Like, pedophilia is okay under the state, as I say hyperbolically, as long as it is heterosexual pedophilia. And that is not an endorsement of that. That is a fucking critique of the state itself. Because the state does not do enough to combat pedophilia. It does not do shit to combat rape culture. It doesn't do anything to fucking negate transphobia or misogyny for that matter, especially on a systemic level. Like the Democrats who are in office, who rally behind women's rights and shit, they barely fucking push it in. Sure, they speak very, populously. They are able to use populist rhetoric and lots of money campaigning for, like pro-choice and shit like that. That I can give them credit for. But when it comes to actually making policy and actually putting your fucking spine on the line, like, they fall very fucking short. And that's the most infuriating thing about it, right? Like, I remember during the 2020 election, so many people, including self-proclaimed leftists, were telling me we have to stand behind Joe Biden. And look, I already learned my lesson during the 2012 election when Barack Obama, went against Mitt Romney. I already knew that Democrats were full of shit, at least by that point in my life. I knew that Obama was not going to make any significant difference than, Mitt Romney, except for maybe like a handful of very small things that really don't change the structure of things here. Especially now that we're seeing this type of shit that I would expect in the Bush administration, right? I would expect this type of fucking, anti-transgender legislation and, the repealing of Roe versus Wade in the Bush administration. I'd even say in the Trump administration. And I understand that Trump made calculated decisions by replacing people in the Supreme Court. I'm not blind to this. But when it comes to Democrats and liberal parties in general, especially in the United States, making significant efforts to actually stop this instead of paying lip service, they really fall short, right? There's no fucking means of actually stopping this. Like, legitimate means. Like, in my state in particular, last year, it was actually around a year ago, I even had like a Facebook memory of this, like talking about it. Around a year ago, there was legislation being proposed in my state in the United States, and there was like an 8 fucking hour debaticle between transgender people and allies and accomplices and legislators arguing about this at the state capitol, literally fucking arguing about this for 8 hours. Like, this should not be something that you debate about for 8 hours. You should not debate this, period. People deserve to have their autonomy. People deserve to have their right to be able to be themselves and to be able to live safely and securely. And while we're talking about children, it's like, I'm more concerned about what the children are going to grow up as when they start realizing that the state repressed them for so long, right? Like, for me, I wish I actually knew about hormone replacement therapy. I wish I even knew about transgender people. I wish I knew about anyone who was trans. My first exposure to trans people was when I watched the movie Tokyo Godfathers. And I think Tokyo Godfathers is a great movie that represents trans people very well. There are trans people in the movie, including the main character, Hana. I think y'all should go watch that. It's also a Christmas movie. And I think recently it's got an English dub too. But I saw it when I was 11 years old in a Japanese dub with subtitles, and my cousin got it for me, and I was like really interested in watching this because I wanted to get more into anime. But when I saw Hana, Hana is a homeless trans woman, and she is trying to define her life and herself, her purpose as a mother. And of course, given the plot of the story that she finds a baby in a dumpster, she can't be a mother forever. She has to give up the baby to the mother, just the person who gave birth to the child. And I don't mean to spoil the story, it turns out the mother was very suicidal and chose to dispose the baby anyway. Like, Holy shit! It's actually a really now that I think about it, it kind of relates to everything we're talking about. We're talking about an unstable fucking situation with a mother and a child, and here's a trans woman who is more than enthusiastic to be the mother of the child, and yet even she realizes she can't be the mother of this child. She has to give back the child, right? It's like, this movie, I don't think intentionally was meant to be a critique of all this. I don't think so, but it kind of can be seen that way. Again, strongly recommend y'all watch the movie. It's really good. There is transphobia in the movie, but it does represent the trans people in the movie pretty well. It does show, like, trans people struggling a lot. It is kind of a sad movie. It's a tearjerker. But again, it doesn't, make queer-coded representations of trans people or anything like that. It's a good movie. I love it. I saw it recently again this previous holiday season. I'm sorry I'm ranting on it. It's just a really good movie. So what does that leave us with now? Like, all this. I kind of want to conclude this anyway. What is all this, what do we do here with this? Well, first of all, I do think that no matter, what our feelings are about liberals who are pro-choice, we still need to stand behind them and support them and give them as much power as they can to fucking resist this. I think, sectarian bullshit is not important when we're trying to win victories here. I do think that, however, when liberals start, settling down for less, and they start saying, oh, well, you know what, I may not like your opinion as a right-wing fuck-ass, but you know what, I respect your right to have that opinion. No. No. Once they start going down that route, you tell that liberal to shut up, sit down, and fucking, like, shut the fuck up of the motherfucker who is saying that people should not have abortions, or that trans children should not be trans children. They gotta be cisgender, desirables for, the predatorial fucking straight people. Like, holy shit. Just holy shit. Just, the other thing you gotta remember too is that when you're talking to these people, especially the people who are against abortion and against trans people being trans people and themselves, you gotta remember that that's gonna happen regardless of what the law is, right? Like, it's gonna happen behind closed doors, and it's gonna happen in very unsafe conditions. Again, like I said earlier, I would rather trust a medical licensed professional over, your uncle's fucking rusty ass coat hanger. And more importantly, in the context of trans people, I would rather trust a licensed medical professional who can not only prescribe you the HRT necessary or the testosterone necessary for you to undergo it at a supervised, medically, just like it's a medically supervised, like, environment, instead of fucking going on some back alley website where you have to pay $400 fucking or more for estrogen from a website that is originated and located in some oceanic fucking island. It's like, if you've had this struggle before, y'all know what I'm talking about. I remember it was hard for me to get HRT for a while, and I couldn't just go to the doctor. It was impossible for me, my living circumstance. So I had to nonchalantly and very, very discreetly, like, go to this website where I had to buy HRT from a website that was, originated in Turkey. So, like, and we're talking like a lot of fucking money, not just for import purposes, but also to consume. And I don't recommend this either. I don't recommend you do this, because also, while you're taking HRT, it is extremely, advised, especially by medical professionals, and again, I'm not a medical professional, just making that clear here. It is advised that you get your blood checked every once in a while. Like, for me, I haven't done it in a year, because I haven't been able to go to the lab, but I'm going to later this week, and I'm actually very fucking happy about that, because I need to do that. It's important that you get your blood checked, because if you don't, and you're taking HRT very, very, very dangerously like that, you could die. Especially if you're not leveling, the amount of HRT that is necessary for your own health. It is important that you have a medical professional in this situation. And banning abortion and banning trans people, trans children even, it actually puts them at risk of dying due to medical fucking complications that would be better suited in a medical environment. So really, these fundamental fucking Christians who are just so fucking hell-bent on, putting an end to abortion and putting an end to the trans agenda, or whatever fucking goddamn anti-Semitic fucking misogynistic scapegoat that they want to put on this week, they are actually doing more harm to children than they are doing good. There is no fucking law or any legislative push being put into place to stop rape, to stop incest, to stop any form of homophobia or transphobia. But instead, there is legislative push put into place presently in our country in multiple states that is actively reinforcing that fucking psychological and sociological damage on all people. There is no fucking incentive to maintain the state, especially when the state is inherently coercive and destructive. It does not account for autonomy. It is not autonomous. It does not care about autonomy. People in office can use populist rhetoric, like the rhetoric I'm using here, but they can't give you that autonomy that we speak of. They can't give you that freedom even. I'll even use the word freedom here. They can't give you that freedom to be yourself, or to be safe, secure, to have a backup in case shit goes down. Like I said, the anti-abortion bill, it does take into account rape and incest. And even then, it still bans abortion. Why should the state exist? It's not necessary. It should be abolished. And people often say, well, we need some kind of structure. What kind of structure? The one that actually takes away your fucking autonomy? What they usually mean is we need some kind of system. I can't really, blame them for feeling this way. And sure, there should be some kind of system put into place. Even as an anarchist, I don't disagree. We must remember that anarchism is about scrutinizing and abolishing unjustified hierarchies. And a justified hierarchy needs to prove itself that it is legitimate, that it is a justified hierarchy. And thus the United States, as a organ of class rule, has perpetually proven itself to be unjustified to govern over the people. The capitalist system that does not allow for maternity leave when people are giving birth to their children. It does not take into account their autonomy. It does not take into, any of the necessary means to being a parent to a child. It doesn't even support the child's development. It only cares if the child is useful for the labor force, like in 18 to 20 years. And even then, it's just like, that shows that it is an unjustified mode of production. That is why I am an anarchist. Anarchism is, at least to me, is a scrutiny of coercive and oppressive forces globally, whether it be through the system itself or through social systems. The social systems of patriarchy in particular is what we're talking about here, which is reinforced by several forms of other types of oppression, like capitalism, of course, white supremacy, racism, fucking goddamn homophobia, transphobia, sexism, misogyny. All of these things reinforce patriarchy. And I think that we need to push more militantly as fuck, for our autonomy, for our freedom. There is already a huge wave of feminists that is generational, that have been pushing for the right to make your own choice. No one wants an abortion. No one likes having an abortion. But it's good to have it there if you choose to have it. And even if you were in the subjective case where you were raped by, say a family member even, and if you made the choice to not get an abortion, to keep the child, well, hey, that's still your choice. You have that autonomy. You have a child, you can make that choice for yourself. But no one else should make that choice for you. Not the governor, not the state, not your rapist, no one but you. You should be able to make that choice. And that is the biggest and most solid argument you can make with, like, pro-lifers. They're not pro-life, by the way. I don't like calling them pro-life. If they were pro-life, they'd support life once that child was born. That's all I gotta say. I'm going to see if there's any comments. And then let's see. Our life is nothing but a fundraising opportunity for them. You're not wrong, Chad Alpha. You make an interesting point. I think in particular, like, humans are fucking commodified under capitalism. And I think if that's the incentive that is behind the quote-unquote pro-life crowd, then I think that is an unjustified fucking form of violence. Forcing people to have children. Forcing people to literally live for the rest of their lives with a reminder that they were raped or were violated by a fucking family member. Like, as an anarchist, I often say this, but the state is literally fucking predatorial. Like, pro-lifers are predatorial. The Catholic Church is especially fucking predatorial. I know this, I've experienced it. I am a victim of that as well. And I might make a video about it in the future. I don't know. All I know is that this cannot last. Death to the US empire. I hope y'all have a great weekend and a happy Mother's Day.